Well, you better accept yourself. The sooner the better.
A good film will change what an audience thinks for maybe a day. But a great film will change how an audience thinks the rest of their lives.
The way that we judge other people is sort of a reflection of how we see ourselves.
Director Aaron Schimberg at the Berlin Film Festival, where he showed his brand new movies, the psychological thriller, one that's very thought-provoking. It's called A Different Man. It stars Sebastian Stan, also Adam Pearson, and actress Renate Reinsve. We're about to hear from all of them very soon more about this film because it definitely has started a lot of debates.
I was born with a cleft palate, meaning I was born with a hole in my face, and I've always, which has been corrected to a point. They closed it up, but the mark of it remains, and I've certainly gone through life always wondering, how much of this defines me? How much does this cleft palate, does this flaw, as it's often considered, how often does it, or how much does it define me for other people, but also to myself? And if I had been born differently, if I could fix it now, fix it more than it has been fixed, what would change about me? So I always have these sort of thoughts. I've lived my life with these thoughts, so I can draw upon these thoughts. And then beyond that, so I've been making work about this. This is my third film, and my second with Adam Pearson. So I wanted to work with Adam again. And in my last film, it was always very important to me, if I'm making films about disfigurement, to cast people with disfigurements. And yet, when I did that, some people called the very idea exploitative, and I thought, that's interesting. If you cast somebody who doesn't have a disfigurement, and you put them in makeup, that seems to go against the ideas of representation that we're all talking about now. And yet, if you cast somebody with a disfigurement, that's inherently exploitative. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And this is a way of avoiding the issue altogether. So I sort of thought, okay, well, I'll make a movie and I'll do both, and I'll have these two, somebody in makeup and somebody with a disfigurement, and I'll put them in a movie, and I'll have them sort of go to war with each other, both as characters and also as ideas, and see what happens.
That's the director there explaining a little bit more about the inspiration behind this powerful new movie. The film follows Edward, played by Sebastian Stan, who, after undergoing facial surgery, becomes obsessed on another man playing him in a stage production based on his previous life. So the first part of the film, he plays one character, and then he kind of is whatever he was deemed as before. So it's kind of Sebastian Stan playing two different characters, one with a facial disfigurement and the other as he was originally. It will absolutely have you thinking about this idea of how we judge each other. When we look at somebody and the way that they look, what does that mean? How do we behave towards them because of that? And then also the other side of it, how we judge ourselves.
It's about a 2-hour process in the morning. Mike Marino was a great artist, and he came on, and we were doing that. And obviously, when you have such a massive transformation, a lot of things get affected. Your physicality, behavior, and everything else sort of was informed from that. And then, of course, it inevitably, it also leads to the emotional kind of learning lessons that come from that. I think, as I expressed before, particularly for me, was the experience of having had the opportunity to walk around New York City, as Edward, and the limited amount of contact that I had with the world really was informing for me in many ways, because there's not much other ways for me that I would have really understood what that experience is.
During the press conference, a journalist stood up and asked this question about this idea of Sebastian going through this transformation of being this person that had this disfigurement to this idea of beauty, and he referred to the disfigurement as the beast. Sebastian jumped in quite quickly and corrected the journalist, and I think he did the right thing because everybody applauded him at the end of it.
And I have to call you out a little bit on the choice of words there, because I think part of why the film is important is because we often don't have maybe even the right vocabulary, right? I mean, I think it's a little bit more complex than that, and obviously there's language barriers and so on and so forth. But beast isn't the word, I think, right? And I think ultimately, it's just interesting to hear this point, because I feel like to some extent it shows us. I think that's one of the things that the film is saying. Is that we have these preconceived ideas and sort of these. We're not really educated on how to really understand this experience in particularly. The things that you're saying about him at the beginning, that's your interpretation, right? Everyone might have a different interpretation of what he's going through. That might not be it. It might have been just for you, So I can't really speak to that. I think it's just one of the things I love about the movie is that he's offering you sort of a way to kind of look at it, and hopefully if you can have the same objective point of view over while you're experiencing the film, then maybe you can kind of pick apart the initial instincts that you have, and maybe those aren't always the right ones.
As Sebastian said, he went out and about in New York in the makeup and experienced the two sides of the spectrum, the overcompensation and the avoidance. And I was also, we shot it in New York for 2 months, so I'm dealing with that as well. And I think the more, and I get the initial response, when we see something that we're not used to, we go into this bizarre fight, flight or freeze mode. But the more you see something you're not used to, the more you eventually get used to it. And slowly but surely, that curiosity, and it is curiosity to begin with, slowly fades away. When I got to New York, I was based in Manhattan. Whenever I'm going to be anywhere for a long period of time, I find my coffee spot, I find my breakfast spot, and I find my bar, and I make those my 3 touch points. And initially, when you first rock up, we've got to do a lot of heavy lifting and do 90% of the legwork in a conversation to, as you say, normalize it, destigmatize it, and get people used to this new experience that they're having. But then the more you do it, the easier it gets, and then the less people see it. And the only way to challenge people's perception on something, and truly challenge it, is to gently and kindly expose them to it. And the more we can do that and have conversations like the one we're having now, the easier and more organic that all eventually becomes. And as I said earlier, I've got no business in shouting people into submission. I love a good, honest conversation, a little bit of loving, graceful correction when needed. But the more we can see people who don't fall into the as the earlier question was, don't fall into the category of beautiful. I think we've done the word beauty a massive disservice by quantifying it. And so the more we can see people who aren't like us in not just in the media but out in the real world, the more we get used to it. And everyone's different, everyone's messed up. Let's all be different and messed up together.
Absolutely fascinating and so interesting hearing from the director, Aaron Schimberg, on his perspective. Also Adam Pearson, Renate a little bit, but Sebastian Stan, I just think he picks such great roles. He's somebody you cannot put into a box. And also, I really love the fact that he challenges himself and he goes against the grain, even if he knows there's going to be debate and contention, he just goes for it.
It lives between two extremes, as I was saying. It lives between overcompensation and complete uncomfortability, and we have to find a better way. I think I don't want to speak for Aaron, I think he can say it more eloquently than me, but when I was looking at this film, I think that's what I understood and I was drawn to was that this offers us a little bit perhaps a different way of looking at it, so that we don't always have to live between these extremes of totally ignoring but then overcompensating that as we do.
And this debate around if you don't have a disfigurement, you shouldn't be playing somebody with a disfigurement. What are your thoughts on that? Because the director, Aaron, who has a disfigurement himself, said he deliberately put Adam Pearson in the film, who he's worked with before, who does have a disfigurement that he's lived with all his life. And then he's also cast Sebastian Stan, who in part of the film has a makeup prosthetic image to create a disfigurement.
While the concept of the film was coming together, it went through a few stages. It started as a sort of started from two ideas. I had a sort of Jekyll and Hyde story idea that I was playing with, and then another story that is almost impossible to describe. And I couldn't make headway on either of these scripts, and then I put them together, and I realized that I saw a path forward. So once I wrote the script, there was basically a draft, and the movie is more or less true to that.
I will be back with more videos. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and turn your notifications on because I don't want you to miss anything. Have a lovely day. Bye.